in the economy of having rate increases 3.5%, maybe twice a year, trying to stay ahead of inflation. But many of these same hospitals, same clinics, are actually cutting all that back. But still the same issue is that there's still increases that you're facing each and every day, and you've got to be concerned with staying ahead of inflation. And what do you do about that? Well, maybe what you do is you look at possibly considering 2.5% over more times, 3 or 4 times over the year. Do you make the amount of increase smaller and spread it out? But then you've got the whole, it gets back to, in these economic conditions, can you even afford to do that? And you've probably even heard this a lot of times, just don't raise fees. Don't do it. Don't raise fees. But you know what? The fact and the reality is that the distributors haven't gotten that message. Are they charging you more? Do they keep going up in their fees? So really what you're having to do is pay attention to these prices and adjust your fees accordingly based on your own circumstances. And I pulled a quote from Elise Lacker, a practice consultant, who said, veterinarians who do raise their fees but do not increase their service, they're in for a disaster. Who would agree with that? I mean, if you charge the same, you go to Starbucks and you get a cup of coffee and they charge you $4 for the cup of coffee. The next day you go to Starbucks and they charge you $6 for the same cup of coffee. Are you going to get a little upset? There's got to be some kind of increase in value, some kind of increase in the actual service that they're getting. So speaking about conveying value to the client, what are you doing now that would signal or indicate that there's value being conveyed to the client? Anybody? Interactive, please.
We started the exam car door service.
Okay.
So that we've got our list, everybody that's come in, we're ready there waiting for them. We know what Fluffy's coming here for. We escort them in, admit them into the practice where you don't drop them off.
Excellent.
The services with them, and then in the afternoon, the person that discharges them takes that test to the car.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Because there's obviously what would seem to be additional values that are being given right there. It's not, and like the way that you were very concerned about some of the wording that you possibly have used and is typically being used as far as a drop-off versus an admittance into the practice. So, those kind of things make a difference. It's critical. It's critical that value is a buzzword, is a key word within your practice as you move forward through these kind of economic times. Managing the staff efficiently. I would venture a guess that the first line here, more often than not, practices big expenses payroll. And when you have that as a big expense, one of the things that you have to look at in these kind of economic times, do you consider layoffs? And what kind of troubles that those will actually have in impacting the whole business? Do you move to seasonal hours where you actually shift out some of the hours and move, take time off, a couple hours during the middle of the day that'll help alleviate some of that payroll cost? Or do you, worse yet, even, discontinue some of those benefits that the individuals are getting that has helped to draw the kind of talent to your hospital that you've been able to do so far? These are things that have to be considered. Inventory control, even before you even start looking at any kind of changes, what's the medicine look like on the shelf? Is there good control that's being, maintained over that inventory? Are you paying attention to, the inventory and working harder to collect fees rather than giving away the product? But really the focus on all of this as we move through this is really to remain focused on what's important, what you actually have control over. And just remember, that this too will pass. The real question is when is it going to pass? Client retention. I've got this up here because I truly believe, and hopefully you do too, that if you can retain the customers, those that are coming off, and just hold on to those, that'll equal growth. Just by holding on to the ones that have been falling off. The problem, the situation that we're in as we continue to move on into the next century is that people are nomadic. They're starting to be able to move around wherever they want to, and it's becoming easier and easier for them to do that. There's that double-edged sword that's out there called the internet, right? And be careful about the internet. Be careful about things that are set up within the internet, because as you know, one negative word, can almost be a death blow to a practice. It spreads like wildfire, So how do you deal with those kind of issues? And maybe before, people just put up with bad service. There was one vet in the middle of town, and you dealt with them. In fact, you knew each other. The families knew each other. But there's more opportunities for people to go to different services just by plugging in exactly what you're looking for in five or six that can do that. So how do you separate yourself in that mix as people are trying to compare you? It gets to the topic of client loyalty versus churn. What would be indicators of loyalty within your practice? Do you have loyal customers? Who are these customers? Do you know who they are? Okay. Could you probably identify your maybe 5 of your most loyal customers? Have you ever had a discussion with them and just asked them point blank, why are you staying with us? What makes us different? When you think about that, those things that they respond back to you are the things that you need to be singing loud and clear. Okay? That's where your focus needs to be, because those things that your loyal customers come back to you for, those are the things that are appreciated most and represent the kind of quality work that you do each and every day. On the other side, the flip side of that, the churn, those people you lose. When was the last time you had some kind of follow-up survey with those people, maybe the last 5 people that left, and maybe had the conversation, why'd you leave us? What was it that we did?
It's hard to do.
It is so tough.
You just do it.
Yep.
Why are my facts not being directed?
Exactly. Okay. You call them all. How does that conversation go? Is that how do you sort of?
Well, like for me, I work with the corporate office.
Right.
I actually work in an individual practice, and I just call them and let them know that the receptionist let me know that they were leaving the practice.
Mm-hmm.
If they wouldn't mind talking to me, I'm not at the practice.
Right.
As to why they left my.
Excellent. Taking that approach of, we've obviously failed you somehow. And we truly want your impact as to what we did that failed you, what it was. Because those people don't have anything to lose. They're gone. Hopefully they're not hiding anything back. Now you have to remember, sometimes there's going to be this sour grape stuff, and you're going to have to dig through and uncover what that is, get past the emotion of the situation. Right. Exactly. You're going to get those kinds of things, and actually we'll get into that in just a second. Enhancing customers' experiences. These are the kind of things that you're going to have to look at. You're probably already doing. How are you promoting the fact that you're doing these things? Providing 24/7 access. How do you do that? How is it possible with more and more people having different hours and different needs of making contact with you? How are you providing some kind of, access 24/7? They've got access on the internet all day long. They're all looking at it at different times. At 9 o'clock, you've got some issue. You need to be able to, resolve that, get some information. Are you making contact, either by phone or email, for every surgical patient? These are some of the standard stuff that everybody knows that should happen. Is it happening? Because you know what? The business, the day-to-day business, the day-to-day veterinary business gets in the way. I get it. But the client who didn't get the call doesn't get it. They don't understand it. Satisfaction surveys, again, trying to get that information, trying to understand, anytime that you can allow your people to talk to you is good. You want to be careful in satisfaction surveys that you don't cherry pick. just go after the good people necessarily? Yes, ma'am.
Bucket on your door and reflect them. Holy crap, the things that came through. Good stuff, bad stuff. I found out I had a technician that was doing some things that didn't make a little better.
Right.
And it really did help practice. And clients love it. They love being able to either praise you or correct you or do. But they really do. It really does help.
Yep.
Is it anonymous? Do they have a name on it? Yes. Now, I have put their name on it, but it's basically anonymous. There's a slot in one of our doors, and I just go through at the end of the day and collect them all. So I never know when it got put in there, if I do.
They don't learn to it?
No.
Did y'all print that up through the clinic and you bring a half by 11 envelope?
I have one of my practice management binders, and I just photocopied it, and just regular long road, but you fold it, have to put it in really small, like this envelope.
The obvious benefit there with, you were talking about the technician who had an issue. Now, think about this. If you didn't have that survey in place and that technician, whatever they were doing, was allowed to continue doing what that was doing, how many bad seeds would that plant over what period of time before it became such a huge place and festered over into everything else? I mean, those kind of things, when you can uncover those issues, uncover those problems sooner than later, it's all of this is intuitive. All of this makes sense, but it's just a matter of getting them into practice. And really, all of these things are really looking at expanding the whole lifetime value of these clients, because each of these clients are a huge value to you. Okay, so what are we doing to expand that lifetime value? Because these are the same people, those loyal customers, those ones that are having the great experiences, that are being asked by their neighbors of, where do I take my dog? Where do I take my cat? Where do I go when I have this kind of issue? That's where your referrals are coming from. So looking at that life value. And have you actually thought about putting a value? What is this person really worth? And I'm not necessarily talking about what their average transactions are multiplied times the number of times they come in to visit. But there are certain ways that you can sort of measure these customers. How many referrals has this person brought in? How many visits are they in full compliance? All of these kinds of things, to be able to really identify some of these people as basically being your mouthpiece. How do you sort of reward that? How do you recognize those kinds of customers? Or are you even looking at measuring that right now? One notion that I'd heard about from one of the veterinarian folks was they try to take a look at actually making buckets of people and really trying to group their people in different ways so that they can look at how they measure, how they sort of, deal with some of these folks. And they just put some, sort of 3 different groups together and said, okay, we've got one new patient, and this is the type of patient, these are the ones that accept the